In today's video, I am having great fun at home, taking beautiful abstract macro photos just like these. It's great and it's cold outside, so I'm trying a really easy macro project that I'm doing from the comfort of my own home, and you can do the same. It's one I've done before on this channel. I really enjoyed the results, so I thought it'd be fun to return to it. And it's super easy to do. All it really boils down to is taking photos of pools of oil on water with a colorful background beneath. And while this setup I've got here might look a little bit complicated, this is largely just because I'm trying to film this video as well. So I'll take you through what I've done here and how you could replicate this just as easily at home. So let's start from the top going down. We've got my camera, of course, right on the top. Now I've got this at the moment angled on a light stand because I want it to be firing down. Now, no worries if you don't have this, you don't actually need the camera on a support. If you've got enough light, you can probably use shutter speeds that are fast enough that you can hand hold the camera without getting blurry shots. Alternatively, you can maybe get a tripod and lean it up against a table in order to kind of get it pointing downwards. But what's it pointing down through? Well, I've got this covered up to keep dust and hair from falling in my receptacle, but that receptacle is just a glass measuring jug. Now, crucially, it's glass, so you can see through it. And I'm using a jug for two reasons. One, the baking trays, the glass ones that I had like Pyrex, basically laser etched into the bottom of it. And that was actually noticeable in the images that I tried doing. So unfortunately, that didn't work for me. So instead, this round glass jug has got a nice flat bottom without any writing or engraving on it. But it's got a handle, so it's actually meant that I can prop this up with another light stand and this clamp that I actually use when photographing cars. But if you've got a glass one, then you can just prop that glass tray up on a few books or something, and you don't even need an additional stand. So straight away, two of the complicated stands that I've got, you don't actually need. I've got a couple of inches of water in here, and on top of that, I put a couple of glugs of vegetable oil. Then on this side, we've got my light. Now, I'm using a big LED light for this because I'm shooting videos. So if you are only interested in doing stills, you can do this with basically any light you've got. You can use an LED panel, you can use a little handheld one, you can use a speed light. If you want to set it up with like a big softbox like I've got, you could either use one with a speed light, you could set up a white bed sheet here, just hang it up and fire that light through it. There are any number of ways you can do this at home. You might not even need a light. If you've got a big window you can do this next to, that might give you enough light to do this. Then on the bottom, I have got this table laid out with colorful pieces of paper. And this is what is going to give us all of that nice differing colors in the images. And these are so simple. These are just any pieces of colored paper. I got these from a craft shop, but you can use a t-shirt, you could use bath towels, anything with some color in it is fine because you're not going to see any textures, you're not going to see logos, so you don't even need to splash out buying art paper. You can literally just use anything you've got that's got a splash of color. And that makes it so easy to throw different things, different colors, different blends of colors into your images and get different results. Now, the other thing that you might have seen hanging down here is just a remote release. Now, this just means I can keep my camera a little bit more steady by not having to touch it every time I want to take a photo. I can just trigger it with this. Again, you don't necessarily need one. You can do this with your camera handheld, but also you could just tap on maybe your live view if you want to do that, or use a 2-second timer if you're particularly conscious about not having any movement in your camera. So enough of me chatting away. Let's turn the camera on, let's swirl the oil around and see about taking some photos. I'm going to be manually focusing this because I want to make sure that that focus stays exactly on the film of oil on top of the water rather than maybe the oil that sort of dropped onto the bottom of the jug. But trying to get that focus at first isn't super easy. So what I'm going to do is just start to flick through, just using the plastic drinking straw here, some bits of oil, and then I'm just going to move that focus point until I start to see these different bits come into focus. About like this, I think looks good. Once you've got your focus, you'll need to figure out your settings. Now that is going to depend on how much light you've got coming in. Now for me, I have got this big LED light here. This is the Gaussian Molus G200. So it actually puts out quite a lot of light and has this nice big softbox as well. But if you're working with flash, then you're gonna have to do a little bit of an experiment to get those settings right. But for me, I'm working at about f3.2. Now, you don't want to go to like f10 because then you're going to start to see more of the paper or whatever it is you're using as your backdrop. So just for an example, if I took this to, let's just go with f13 for now, and I take that shot, suddenly we've got very defined lines of where these paper sheets are falling, but I don't want that. What I want is that lovely total blur of color, and we'll achieve that by using a wider aperture. So by bringing it back down to f3.5, I'll bring my shutter speed back up to 200th of a second, and I take the same photo. Now you can see that difference of having that wide open aperture. It just allows all of these to just blur into this beautiful array. My ISO speed is actually at 640. I'm not worried about noise here because we're working with quite abstract shapes, so I can quite easily apply a lot of noise reduction to this scene anyway. But I am going to be swirling the oil a little bit. There will be some movement, so I don't want a slow shutter speed. I want it to be at least a 200th of a second to make sure that that movement is caught and we don't get any blurriness. So the big thing to think about then is what colors you're going to put underneath your jug. So for me, I've been playing around with a lot of things. On some of my earlier tests I did in the last video, I really loved the blue and pink combination. It just gives such a lovely calming vibe. I love the way that the colors blend together. And I ended up creating a little triptych that I might actually sell as a little 3-print pack at some point. And if you're interested, you can let me know if you'd be keen to buy some. But I want to change things up a little bit, and I've been playing around with this orange, yellow, and pink color combination, which I'm really keen on because I think it gives kind of like a 60s psychedelic vibe, which works so well with those swirling oils that really kind of matches some of that iconography you'd have seen at the time. But the brilliant thing about doing this, particularly if you're just using your camera with live view, is that you can just move the papers around and see exactly how they're going to line up in your image. So in this, I'm just looking towards getting a hint of that pink in the left, a strip of the yellow down the middle, and then that's going to blend into the orange in the upper right corner. So something like that I think works really well. But if I wanted to do something completely different, it's so easy. Well, that's fantastic. It's so easy just to throw in some different colors all together. I could even do this. I could do this blue and black, give it almost like a nighttime look. I quite like it, and it might work well actually as a high contrast black and white. And once I start sort of jittering up the oil and the bubbles, it does look kind of cool how half of the bubble is refracting the blue and then half is refracting the black. So we get a little bit of both going on. And that is the beauty of this. Any color combination can work. And while some colors will naturally work better together, if you are maybe up on your color theory with complementary colors, then that could help you create some really great looks. But there's no end to the experiments you can do. You can try any kind of colors you want. You can lay them over each other so you get various different looks in your shots. I do like this actually. Okay, I'm really thinking maybe high contrast black and whites. But the great thing is depending on the viscosity of the oil you're using, you can be very specific by just sort of moving particular globules into place, because it is about creating some attractive patterns. And maybe if you've got a couple of orbs you want to move around, you can shake things up and then just sort of tease those into position so you get an attractive looking scene. Like I really like all these concentric circles we've got that's mirroring the lighter and the darker tones. There's something kind of cosmic about it, I think. So I'm going to keep shooting away. I've done a little bit of mushing around with my stick. So now I'm just letting them settle, gently move into position. So I'm just doing a few more because everyone is different, and that is another thing that I particularly like about doing these kinds of images, is that no two are ever going to be the same. Every single image is just a snapshot of a fleeting moment. I cannot replicate it. The swirls will never be the same. So every image that I'm going to be taking here will be entirely unique. So rather than just take one and call it a day, we keep those swirls going and we take lots of images. Okay, enough of those moody monochrome ones. I want to bring some of that color back. Where have those sheets fallen to? Okay, so I brought these colors back because I do really want to play around both with this orange and yellow look here, which I do think looks really nice, having these lovely warm tones. But I want to bring in a little bit more of that pink, so I'm just shifting this yellow up like this. So now we've got lovely pink, a splash of yellow, and then that warm orange. I actually really like how the orbs look here, but I'm going to give it a little swirl. And I actually love that as I do, some of these swirls start to catch all three colors, so we get like a nice little rainbow pattern going on. So I'm going to start taking some photos of these. My settings haven't changed, still f3.5, still at 200th of a second. I have noticed that I'm starting to get quite a lot of smaller bubbles, as well as what I think is just little bits of like dust and things that's sort of floating down. Now that will happen, like particularly for me, because I'm spending a while filming this as well, so this water is remaining exposed to everything in the room. But that's fine, because a lot of this stuff I am going to be photoshopping out. I don't want some of these small chaotic bubbles. I want to focus much more on the lovely swirling patterns that we've got. There's something very calming and relaxing. I'm basically seeing it like a lava lamp, really. You know, as the wax in a lava lamp heats up and starts moving around. If you're younger than me and you don't know what a lava lamp is, ask your parents. Yeah, I love some of these. So that's probably enough with this color. Let's try another one. I'm going to get rid of the pink, yellow, and orange entirely. Got a couple of pieces of reflective gold card. Because they're reflective and my light is going across it, it's not catching it at all. Maybe if I take this grid off. I'm having an interesting time with these ones because it's reflective. It means that it's catching the light in certain angles. If I just bring this in and it's fairly flat, you can see here we don't really get much of that gold color at all. But as soon as I start to move it around and it reflects my LED light back into the camera, suddenly we can get far too much. We can get just the right amount. And then, as before, what I might do, camera trigger in one hand, holding the paper in the other, then I can get my little stick and then essentially try and move I'm actually really pleased with the quite luxurious look that I'm getting from these gold ones. But to be honest, that is basically the entire process that I would go through in taking the images. I think before I pack this down, I might try throwing in a few other colors, a few other patterns, and I definitely recommend you doing the same. Once you've got this set up, it's so easy just to put anything else you want down here. Mix those colors up. Try layering them up so you've got 5 or 6 that creates this nice color blend across your image. There's no end to what you can try here. But while I like the look of the images on the back of camera so far, there is going to be a fair amount of work in Lightroom and in Photoshop. So let's take our images over there now and see what we can do. I ended up taking a lot of photos, and so many of them I really, really like. I've actually taken 1,600, and that's just the ones that I haven't deleted. So it really is that thing about kind of snapping away as the oils move around, because every image is going to be different. And you can see again how different it's been with trying the black and white versions at the top. Then I've added in these colors. Really love how some of these have come out. Really nice calming tones, very minimalist, very gentle. Then I've tried these more psychedelic colors. I love the way these strands of oil cut across here, reflecting that pink, the yellow, and the orange. So we get these amazing sort of rainbow tones going on. And then down here again in these mono colors, I think this was just a piece of white packing foam and then the black of my tabletop. But again, we get these amazing swirls of the oil. What we can definitely see though is, certainly as we get later into the shoot, the scenes get a lot more chaotic because that oil is starting to sort of drift apart. We're getting a lot of other bits of debris. We're getting little like bits of fluff and dirt. So as a result, the scenes do start to get a lot more, well, chaotic than what we started with these very sort of gentle scenes. And then certainly if we go all the way down and start getting towards some of these colorful ones, we've got a lot of bubbles, both big and small. We've got a lot of other bits of debris, but we also get these really lovely lines which start to look a little bit like physical structures, I think, almost like if you're looking down at sand dunes, and maybe this is the setting sun casting the light over this part of the dune, this part's in shadow. So I really love how those colors change as the oil moves around on the water. And with some of them, I've tried to emphasize that even more. So like with this one, I've tried to bring in the bubbles. We've got the oil on top. And then even more so with this sort of shot, we've got loads of bubbles. Really trying to, here, rather than have a minimalist scene, I've really tried to maximize the bubbles in the shot, but still moving them around to try and put them in a rough composition that I think is aesthetically kind of what I'm going for. Now this I think is quite a nice example. This is one I've done some retouching on, so you can see that rather than it being full of lots of little bits of debris, I've tried to make it a little bit more focused in the way that these oil droplets are moving. So we've got this nice kind of arc of them coming up here. We've got this lovely swirl of the oil here that's giving that nice differentiation in the color. I just think it looks quite satisfying. But then we've got this one, which is much more minimal, much more ethereal, I think, because we've just got the movements of the oil on the water and then just this one main perfect circle of oil with the little droplets inside it. And I really love that kind of contrast between this sharpness and the softness elsewhere. Then I've got shots like this one, which is really about maximizing the bubbles in the scene. We've got this lovely diagonal line of the larger bubbles, but then it's surrounded with all the small ones, and every single one is refracting the colors in the same way. So I really love how this looks. But the great thing is that as I'm scrolling through, every single one is different. Like even though I've taken them maybe half a second apart, that is enough time for things to have completely shifted and for that image to have completely changed. And as I move it around, as I try different colors, you can see here, this one has very clearly been retouched. I've neatened up all of this outside sort of detritus. This is essentially what it would have looked like as a raw file with all the little bits of debris. But still, you can see that the main elements are there. We've got this lovely sort of orb that contains all of these perfect little circles. So I've neatened that up and I've got that here, and then just this one dot in this negative space. And this lovely blend of color on the background actually was just the box of my MacBook Pro. I'm not sure where that is, but It's just a box with a picture on it. And I tried using some other ones. I tried using some prints. It's so easy to find these different things, but I love how we've got this nice blend of pink tones, silvery tones, almost rose gold in there a little bit. But then going away from those colors and we move to some of our black and white ones, again, this hasn't been retouched yet, but we've got these lovely minimal shapes in the middle of the frame, but this nice carving line between the white and the black. And if we just have a move through these, you can see how these pockets of oil are moving around, and I love the different shapes. This, I just adore it. These lovely 3D forms. There's real depth in the way that it's not shadow. What it is the light and the black, but it's made it look like shadow, and as a result, it's made it look like this is like a bowl carved out as though we're looking down on a landscape. To my eye, these kind of look almost like AI-generated imagery, those sort of geometric AI scenes, but it isn't. It's real, and these are amazing little fleeting moments. And maybe I'm overthinking this a little bit, but while AI is being pushed to try and create photorealistic imagery, I actually really like creating photos that could be AI. So this is one I've done some retouching on to remove some of the chaotic bits of debris and reduce it instead to the main elements, which is this lovely cluster of circles and this nice arcing line that goes through one bubble in the middle, but it's separating the light from the dark really nicely. I just love that layout. And quite a lot of these I really love, even more minimal. Again, I've retouched this. Just this beautiful organic shape and this little dot. That's it. It's so simple, so beautiful. And then here, almost like a yin-yang symbol, we've got the light, we've got the dark. If I had bubbles here doing that, that would be even better, but I didn't. And I'm not going to Photoshop it in because that's not the point of these images for me. And you can see the sort of cleanup that's involved. It's pretty minimal. We're just basically taking away a lot of the little tiny stray bubbles and obviously all these like bits of cat hair that's fallen into the pot of water. And then this is another one. We just got this lovely slash of that oil going through and the one dot. Something very fine art about some of these, I think. And again, created in such a simple way. But the post-processing is a little bit involved to an extent. And I'm going to take you through how I do that. And the one I'm going to do it on is this gold one here, because I just love that we've got this sort of swoop of the line of oil coming in. We've got the nice droplets within the swoop, but it needs a little bit of cleanup. I love the color. I love that contrast between the gold and the black. I've done a smaller version of this, or a similar version here. But again, really focuses on those forms and how all the shadows almost gives it a lovely 3D texture. But I particularly like how this one looks. So I'm going to start off by doing a few edits in Lightroom. I'm going to bring the exposure up generally, drop that highlight, and up the contrast. And that's just helping bring out some of that texture between the dark and the light. One thing I can see on this shot more than one of the other ones I've done is that we've got this this odd texture here, which I think is possibly coming from the fact that I had a grid on my light. So essentially what it's doing is reflecting back that grid, which is a bit of a shame. I'm hoping that maybe I can kind of clean that up a little bit in Photoshop. So let's take it over there now and see what we can do. So I brought this over into Photoshop, and to be honest, 99% of the work happens in Photoshop. I've duplicated the background layer just so we've got that original as a reference. Most of the work is done using the Spot Healing Brush tool. So I'll bring that up, and I have it at a pretty large size because there's no point in going right up close on these things when I can just do it like this and just start dotting away on all these little distracting elements. I'm only really looking to get rid of some of the larger ones. I might leave these two in there for now, just see how it goes, and I'm definitely going to leave this one here for now. I can always get rid of it later, but the other ones for me aren't really adding anything to the equation. That is most of them done. This one isn't particularly messy. I'm just going to drop the size down and get rid of some of these ones where I can see them. On some of the photos I've done so far, they've taken maybe an hour of work, maybe longer per photo, just to go around doing all of these, putting the bubbles kind of where I want them, generally just cleaning up the scene because I want these to look very neat, very polished. How much of that you do yourself, that's up to you. But for me, this is time well spent because I get a much better looking result on the other side. So, you know, make a cup of coffee, put a podcast on, and spend your time playing around, neatening it up. So now most of the larger ones have been gotten rid of. I already think it looks a little neater and a bit more professional if we just look before and after. That's done so much of the heavy lifting, but we can refine it further. So I'm going to duplicate that again. I'm going to go Filter, Noise, Dust and Scratches. And this is basically a tool that will help get rid of, as it says, little bits of dust and scratches. So I'm going to leave it about radius 25 pixels, threshold 0. As you can see, it's affecting everything. So now I've applied that. It is going to mean that all of this part has now become quite blurry. As before, there's our after. So I'm going to create a mask by clicking the mask tool down here. Sorry if that's covered up, it might not be. I'm going to leave that where it is actually, and I'm going to get a brush. And with a mask, if it's white, then that means that everything on that layer is showing. If it's black, that means it's hiding it. So if I get my brush tool, again, quite a large size, I'm going to have it quite, you know, the medium hardness and yeah, flow of 63%. And I paint black on, it's now hiding that dust and scratches layer, therefore revealing the sharpness of the original layer beneath. On some of these, I can't really tell. Maybe if I zoom in and we turn it off, yeah, we can definitely see. Without it, we've got all of these little dots all over the place. This graininess from all of the dust and debris, particularly around here. And then when we turn that on, it's definitely nicely smoothed out. So it has made a difference, maybe just not a massive difference. Well, the other thing I'm going to try is just blurring the layer. I'm basically doing the same thing, but painting in some blurriness. So I'm going to merge my visible layers. I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and put in a big, strong Gaussian blur. So my goal really is to try and smooth out some of the choppiness in the lighting I mentioned from using that grid. So I might even try and take that even further to a ridiculous extent. 91, it's far too much blur. But again, I'm going to create a layer mask, and this time I'm just going to invert it, turn it from white to black, therefore hiding everything. And now I'm going to do the opposite, and I'm going to paint in with a brush size of, let's say, 700. Nope, that's 70,000. There we go. And then with my white, I'm going to brush that in, and as I do, you can see very quickly how much it just allows me to brush that away. I really don't want to go too far on this. I don't want to go too close to the edge, because if I do, then suddenly, you know, we're seeing different parts that are blurry that really aren't supposed to be. But I do want to try and create a really smooth, velvety look to this. I can press this button and see exactly where that mask is being pressed. This button is the backslash on Mac. I can't remember what it is on Windows, but it's great just for seeing exactly where you're painting. Let's turn that off though. So I'm pretty confident that I'm not accidentally going over any of the parts that I want to be sharp. I'm just kind of painting in the bits that I know that I want to look nice and smooth. So if we turn that off and on, you can see a huge difference. We've had this sort of rough texture that was down here and around here has now been really smoothed out, and it really helps the actual shapes that we've got stand out much, much more. So I'm really, really pleased with how this looks. These are the same techniques that I would use for all of these images, using that spot healing brush, getting rid of the bubbles where you want them, and then smoothing it out using dust and scratches, and then using that Gaussian blur. Those are the same techniques I've used for everything on here. So here, as an example, this shot is very chaotic, lots of bubbles all over the place. We've got hairs that have fallen in. But otherwise, I really love how this image looks. We've got that pink, we've got that yellow, we've got that orange. I love all the sort of swirling of the orbs. Like I mentioned when I was taking it, it's kind of like looking at a lava lamp, but I've just neatened it up, simplified it to just these main bubbles in the middle, because I don't want it to be this chaotic. I wanted it instead to have a bit more of a tranquil scene. Some of the other ones I really like include this one. I love the gold, these great orbs, and the way that they all have this lovely light to dark contrast on them. Incredibly minimal here, just this shard of oil coming through the scene, separating that light from dark. Super minimal, but this is probably one of my favorites. So is this one, which is just, again, this curve. Really love how these come out. But I particularly love that every single one is so different. You could do this 1,000 times and you will not get the same photo. You can go and set up the exact same scene with the same camera, lens, colors, oils, and your photos will still be completely different to mine. This is genuinely one of my favorite projects that I've done at home. But I think that brings me to an end of today's video. Genuinely, I have seriously enjoyed doing this. I've still got it set up over there in the other half of my studio, and I'm probably going to spend the next few days taking a few more as well, trying some more colors, because I just love pretty much every single shot that comes out. I love how varied they are. I love getting something that's really chaotic, that's full of bubbles. Then I love going the other way and finding these super minimalist, almost fine art looking sort of scenes. If you've never given something like this a go, definitely recommend doing it. It's super easy to set up, the results are great, and particularly if the weather's really bad and you just don't have the inspiration to head outside with your camera, this is a great way of staying creative and also staying warm. And I would love to see what results you get. So if you do give this a go, please do tag me on Instagram, add me to your stories. My handle is in the video, it's @BatteryHQ. I would love to see what you get. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, then do please hit that like button. And of course, consider subscribing to my channel if you don't already. And I will see you next time.